100% line strength, or very close to it, is what Snell knots provide when tied correctly, making them one of the strongest hook connections you can use. So today, let's learn what's often called the easy Snell, which is one of the simplest variations out there. I'll show you how to tie it, the common mistakes to avoid, and I'll cover one situation where you really shouldn't use this knot, so stick around to make sure you don't lose that next big fish. So let's do it. First thing you want to do is get your line and hook, and you can use monofilament or fluorocarbon or even braided line. If you are going to use braid, there's one adjustment which I'll show you how to make. But what you want to do is you want to take your line, you want to run it through the eye of your hook. Now the side of the eye that you run it through is important for this knot. So if you imagine that your hook eye has two sides, one of which faces the point of the hook and one of which goes out the back, what you want to do is you want to run your line through the side that faces the point of your hook, like so. So after that, you want to take your line and go ahead and pull it through. And you do want to give yourself a decent amount of tag end here to work with. So and then you want to take your thumb, and I like to pinch the bottom of the hook along with the line that we've just pulled through. So next you're going to want to take your tag end, and working from the bottom of the hook where you're pinching up towards the eye of the hook, what you want to do is start to make a series of wraps. So you're going to go ahead and just over both the line and the hook shank, you're going to go ahead and start to make these wraps. Now the number of wraps that you want to make here is going to depend on a couple things, including the strength of your line and the type of line that you're using. So on average, about 5 to 7 wraps should be enough for this knot. But if you're using something like braided line or super light line, you probably want to increase that maybe to between 8 to 10. And the other important part of this step is you really want to make sure that each one of your wraps is sequential. So in other words, you want to make sure it's one after another here and that they're not overlapping each other, which can cause binding and other problems later. So after you have your wraps completed and they're all sequential, what you should have is your tag end coming out towards the eye of your hook. And then at the bottom of your hook, you have a little loop that you've created. So the next step is, without losing all of your wraps, you want to take your tag end and then you want to run it through the loop that you have created at the bottom of your hook, just like so. And then what you can do is you can start to take some of the slack out of these lines, but don't tighten it just yet. At this point, you want to make sure of two things. So the first thing is that as you sort of take some of the slack out of it, that you can check that all of these wraps are sequential. And it'll be obvious here if one of them is overlapping the other one, and that's going to cause a problem when you fully tighten it. So this one is looking good. And the other thing that you really want to make sure that you do is lubricate the line. It's an important step for essentially all knots, but what it does is helps reduce friction that can otherwise weaken the knot when you tighten it. So go ahead and wet your line. And while that's happening, I'd like to quickly thank the sponsor of today's video, findafishingbuddy.com. If you're looking for someone to go fishing with, check out their website linked in the description below. They have members in all 50 states. Now that the line is wet, what you can do is go ahead and begin to fully tighten it. You can take the tag end and your main line and give it a good pull, just like so. And then you can just grab onto the hook and using just the main line, go ahead and really tighten it. And then you should take a look, and what you'll see is that just like in this knot, all of the wraps have sort of compacted on each other, should look nice and neat, just like so. And your tag end should come out facing the bottom of the hook there. Then the very final step is you want to take your preferred pair of clippers, trim that tag end, just like so. And you should have a completed easy Snell knot. So one situation where you probably don't want to use this knot is when you're targeting extremely toothy fish whose teeth have the potential to cut or saw through your line. This is because the body of the Snell knot sits on the shank of the hook, which is obviously closer to the mouth of the fish than a traditional knot, and therefore it presents a higher likelihood of getting cut or eventually chewed through during that big fight. So for targeting fish with those razor teeth, I recommend you tie the knot in this video here instead, which is also extremely strong and super easy to tie. Thanks a lot for watching, tight lines out there, and remember, just the lip.